The frozen mountain pass had claimed 3 travelers already that winter, and Liam Archer figured he'd be the 4th if the storm didn't break soon. He urged his mare forward through the knee-deep snow, squinting against the bitter wind that cut through his wool coat like it was nothing more than cotton gauze, when he saw something that made him pull hard on the reins. A figure stumbled ahead on the trail, small and hunched against the elements, moving with the desperate shuffle of someone who had already pushed past exhaustion into that dangerous place where the body simply keeps moving because stopping means dying. He kicked his horse into a faster walk, closing the distance quickly despite the treacherous footing. As he drew nearer, he could see it was a woman, her dark hair whipping wildly around her face, her thin dress offering about as much protection as a prayer in a gunfight. But what caught his attention and held it, what made something twist hard in his chest, was her feet. She wore what might have once been shoes, but now were little more than scraps of leather barely clinging to her feet, leaving her practically barefoot in the snow. He could see the red trail she left behind her, blood from torn and frozen skin marking every agonizing step. "Madam," he called out, but his voice was lost in the howling wind. He pushed the mare closer, close enough now to see the woman trembling so violently she could barely stay upright. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint, her skin pale as the snow beneath her feet. She didn't seem to hear him, didn't seem to see him, just kept putting one foot in front of the other with mechanical determination. Liam swung down from his saddle, his boots crunching in the snow as he landed. He caught up to her in 3 long strides, reaching out to touch her shoulder. She flinched violently, stumbling and nearly falling before he steadied her with both hands. "Easy now," he said, gentling his voice the way he would with a spooked horse. "I am not going to hurt you." She stared up at him with eyes the color of storm clouds, confusion and fear and something else, something desperate, swimming in their depths. Her whole body shook with shivers so intense he could feel them through his gloves. She tried to speak, but her jaw chattered too hard to form words. Without another thought, Liam sat down right there in the snow and started pulling off his boots. They were good boots, broken in and comfortable, lined with sheep's wool against the Montana cold. He'd saved up 3 months' wages for them 2 years back. "What are you doing?" The woman finally managed to force the words out, her voice raspy and raw. "What's it look like?" He got the first boot off, then the second, setting them in the snow beside him. His socked feet immediately registered the cold, but he ignored it. "You cannot walk another mile in those rags." "Hell, I am surprised you made it this far. I cannot take your boots." She swayed on her feet, her eyes struggling to focus. "You will freeze. So will you, and faster." He stood, scooped up the boots, and before she could protest further, he bent and carefully lifted one of her feet. She gasped, whether from pain or surprise he couldn't tell, but she grabbed his shoulder to steady herself. The damage was worse up close. Her feet were torn and bleeding, already showing signs of frostbite around the toes. He worked as gently as he could, sliding the first boot on. It was far too big for her, but that didn't matter. What mattered was getting something between her and the snow. He got the second boot on and stood, steadying her when she wobbled. "There. Better." She looked down at the boots, then up at him, and for a moment he thought she might cry. But instead she straightened her spine, lifted her chin despite the chattering of her teeth. "Thank you. I will find a way to repay you. No need for that." He shrugged out of his coat and draped it around her shoulders before she could object. "Let's worry about getting you somewhere warm before we worry about debts. Can you ride?" "I think so." He helped her onto his mare, then swung up behind her, wrapping one arm around her waist to hold her steady. She was light as a bird and about as delicate feeling. He could feel every tremor that ran through her body. He pulled her back against his chest, sharing what warmth he could, and nudged the mare forward. "There is a trading post about 5 miles ahead," he said, his breath stirring her hair. "Old Swedish fellow runs it. We can warm up there, get you some proper clothes." She nodded but didn't speak. He could feel her gradually relaxing against him as his body heat seeped into her frozen limbs. After a few minutes, she asked, "Why did you help me? Most men would have ridden past." "Most men are fools, then." He adjusted his hold as the mare navigated a particularly steep section of trail. "What are you doing out here alone anyway? This pass is dangerous even in good weather." "I was running." Her voice was barely audible over the wind. "From what?" "A man who thought buying a train ticket west gave him the right to buy me along with it." There was steel in her voice now, anger burning through the exhaustion. "I got away at a station stop, but I did not have time to grab much, just ran into the mountains." "I did not realize how far the trading post was. The conductor said it was just a few miles." "It is a few miles," Liam said, "if you are traveling by horse on a clear day. On foot in a blizzard, it might as well be 100. They rode in silence for a while, the wind howling around them, snow pelting their faces. Liam's feet were going numb in his wool socks, but he had on long johns and heavy trousers, and he'd been through worse. The woman in his arms had stopped shivering quite so violently, which he hoped was a good sign and not a bad one. Hypothermia could make you feel warm right before it killed you. "What is your name?" she asked suddenly. "Liam Archer. I've got a ranch about 20 miles east of here, near Bodie." "Bodie, California? That is the one. You know it. I have heard of it. A mining town, yes. Was a mining town. Gold played out mostly, but there are still folks there, enough to keep things going. My ranch supplies cattle to what is left of the miners and the few remaining mills." He paused, then asked, "What is your name?" She was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. Finally she said, "Vera Durant, at least it was. I do not know what it is now." There was a story in those words, one that spoke of loss and grief, but Liam didn't press. The trading post was coming into view now, a squat log building with smoke rising from its stone chimney, the most beautiful sight he'd seen in hours. He urged the mare faster, and within minutes, they were pulling up in front of the door. Lars Johansson must have heard them coming because the door swung open before Liam could dismount. The old Swede stood silhouetted in the warm light spilling from inside, his white beard and hair making him look like some ancient mountain spirit. "Liam Archer, you are crazier than a rabid coyote riding in this weather," Lars boomed in his thick accent. Then his eyes landed on Vera, and his expression shifted to concern. "And you have brought someone who looks half frozen to death. Get inside, both of you, quickly now." Liam slid off the horse and reached up to help Vera down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground, but he caught her, supporting her weight as they stumbled through the door into blessed warmth. Lars had a good fire roaring in the fireplace, and the small trading post was warm enough that Liam could feel his face beginning to tingle as frozen skin thawed. "Sit her by the fire," Lars commanded, already moving toward the back room. "I will get blankets and hot coffee." Liam guided Vera to one of the rough-hewn chairs near the hearth and helped her sit. She was staring into the flames with an expression that was somewhere between relief and disbelief, as though she couldn't quite believe she was still alive. "Let me see your feet," Liam said, kneeling in front of her. "They are fine." But even as she said it, she winced. "They are not fine, and we both know it." He gently pulled off one of his boots, and she hissed in pain. The wool interior had stuck to her torn skin, and pulling it free opened some of the wounds again. "Lars, you got any medical supplies?" "Under the counter," the Swede called back. "Help yourself." Liam found a wooden box filled with basic medical necessities, better than nothing but not buy much. He carried it back to the fire and set to work cleaning Vera's feet. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood but didn't cry out as he worked, dabbing away frozen blood and dirt with a wet cloth, applying a primitive salve that smelled of pine tar and herbs. "You are lucky you did not lose any toes," he said quietly. "This was damn close." "Luck seems like a strange word for my situation," Vera said, but there was no heat in it, just bone-deep weariness. "Though I suppose I am lucky you came along when you did." Lars returned with an armload of blankets and a pot of coffee that smelled like heaven. He wrapped the blankets around Vera until only her face showed, then poured 3 cups of the thick, dark brew. Liam wrapped Vera's feet carefully in strips of clean cloth, then accepted his cup gratefully, letting the heat seep into his frozen hands. "So," Lars said, settling into a chair with his own coffee, "what brings you two out on a day like this?" Liam explained briefly, leaving out the details that weren't his to share. Lars listened, nodding thoughtfully, his sharp blue eyes moving between Liam and Vera. "You cannot go back out tonight," he said when Liam finished. "That storm is getting worse, not better. You will stay here, both of you. I've got a spare room in the back, nothing fancy, but it is warm and dry. The lady can have the bed, Liam. You can bunk out here by the fire." "I do not want to impose," Vera started, but Lars waved her words away. "Nonsense. I do not get much company up here, especially not in winter. It will be nice to have people to talk to besides my own thoughts." He stood, moving to the small kitchen area. "I will make some stew. You both look like you have not had a decent meal in days." He wasn't wrong. Liam had been surviving on jerky and hard biscuits, and from the look of Vera, she'd been eating even less than that. As the smell of cooking meat and vegetables began to fill the trading post, Liam felt his stomach growl loudly enough that Vera actually smiled, the first real expression of humor he'd seen from her. "Hungry?" she asked. "Could eat a horse," he admitted, then caught himself. "Not my mare, though. She is a good girl." That earned him a small laugh, and he decided he liked the sound of it, wanted to hear it again. They sat in companionable silence as Lars cooked, the storm howling outside, the fire crackling warm beside them. Liam's feet had thought enough to hurt now, that particular burning ache of frozen flesh warming up, but it was bearable. He'd been through worse plenty of times. When the stew was ready, Lars served it in generous portions with thick slices of bread and butter. Liam hadn't realized how hungry he was until the first bite hit his tongue, and then he was eating like a man starved, barely pausing to breathe. Vera ate more slowly, but with no less determination, finishing every bite and accepting a second helping when Lars offered. "So," the old Swede said once they'd all eaten their fill, "where were you headed, Miss Durant?" "Bodhi," Vera said. "I heard there were jobs there, opportunities for someone willing to work hard." "What kind of work?" Lars asked, not unkindly. "Anything honest." She met his gaze squarely. "I can cook, clean, so do basic bookkeeping. I worked in my father's store back in Missouri before he died." "Your mother?" Lars asked. "Died when I was young. It was just father and me for a long time." Her voice went flat. "After he passed, I had no way to keep the store. Debts, you understand. I sold what I could and bought a train ticket west. I thought I could start over somewhere new." "And instead you met trouble," Lars said. "Yes." She didn't elaborate, and Lars didn't push. "Bodhi is a rough town," Liam said. "It has gotten better since the early days, but it is still mostly men, still a lot of drinking and fighting. Not the easiest place for a woman alone. I do not have many other options." There was that steel in her voice again. "I will not go back east. There is nothing for me there." Liam found himself speaking before he'd fully thought through what he was saying. "My ranch could use help. The woman who did my cooking and cleaning, Mrs. Chen, Her husband died last month and she moved to San Francisco to live with her daughter. I have been making do on my own, but I am a terrible cook and an even worse housekeeper. The place is starting to look like a bear den." Vera looked at him, those storm-gray eyes searching his face for something. "You are offering me a job, room and board, plus $30 a month," he said. "It is not charity. I genuinely need the help and you need a safe place to land. Seems like it would benefit us both. You do not know anything about me. I could be a terrible cook. I could be a thief. Are you either of those things? No. Then I guess we will figure it out as we go." He leaned back in his chair, trying to look more confident than he felt. He wasn't entirely sure why he'd made the offer, except that the thought of her going into Bodie alone, vulnerable and desperate, sat wrong in his gut. "I've got a few ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse, but the main house is just me. You would have your own room, your own space. It would all be proper and respectable." She studied him for a long moment, and he forced himself not to squirm under that gaze. Finally, she nodded slowly. "All right, I will try it. But if it does not work out for either of us, I want your word you will help me get to Bodie with enough money to get started there. You have my word." He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she shook it. Her hand was small in his, still cold despite the fire and the blankets, but her grip was firm. Lars raised his coffee cup in a toast. To new beginnings and good fortune. They all drank to that, and then Lars showed Vera to the back room. Liam heard their voices, muffled through the wall, and then Lars returned alone. "That is a good thing you are doing," the old man said, settling back into his chair. "Maybe, or maybe I just complicated my life considerably." Lars chuckled. "Sometimes the same thing, yes. But you did right today, Liam. Not many men would have given up their boots like that. Any decent man would have. You would think so, but the world is not as full of decent men as it should be." Lars poked at the fire with an iron rod, sending sparks spiraling up the chimney. "She has been through something hard, that one. You can see it in her eyes, but she has got steel in her spine too. She will do well, I think, if given the chance." Liam hoped the old man was right. He spread his bedroll out near the fire and lay down, pulling a blanket over himself. The storm continued to rage outside, wind battering the walls and whistling through invisible cracks, but inside it was warm and safe. His last thought before sleep took him was that he'd given away his boots to a stranger and didn't regret it one bit. Morning came clear and cold, the storm having blown itself out overnight. Liam woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon, sat up to find Lars already at the stove, humming tunelessly to himself. "Good morning," the Swede said cheerfully. "Your lady is still sleeping." "Figured we would let her rest. She needs it." "She is not my lady," Liam said, but there was no heat in the correction. He stood, stretching muscles stiff from sleeping on the floor, and padded over to the stove in his socks. "How are the trails looking? Passable if you are careful." "The sun is out, which will help, but there will be ice in the shaded spots." Lars flipped the bacon expertly. "You will want to take it slow." They ate breakfast, and Vera emerged from the back room just as they were finishing. She looked better, the blue tint gone from her lips, some color back in her cheeks. Her hair was braided neatly down her back, and she'd somehow managed to make her worn dress look almost presentable. "Good morning," she said quietly. "Thank you for letting me sleep." "Sit," Lars commanded. "Eat. You have got a long ride ahead of you." She ate, and then they prepared to leave. Lars dug through his stock and found a pair of boots that came close to fitting Vera, as well as a heavy coat, wool stockings, and a pair of gloves. Liam tried to pay, but Lars refused. "Consider it an investment," the old man said. "You help her, she helps you, and maybe next time one of you will help someone else. That is how we survive out here, yes, by helping each other." Liam clasped the man's shoulder in wordless thanks, and then he and Vera were mounted on the mare again, heading out into the brilliant white landscape. The sun on the snow was almost blinding, but it was beautiful too, the trees heavy with white, the sky a blue so deep it hurt to look at. The ride to the ranch took most of the day, taking it slow and careful as they navigated the frozen trails. Vera sat in front of him, silent for long stretches, though occasionally she would point out something that caught her eye, a bird, a fox's tracks in the snow, the way the light came through the trees. She seemed to be drinking it all in, and Liam wondered what her life had been like before, whether she'd ever seen country like this. They stopped once to rest the horse and eat some of the bread and cheese Lars had packed for them. They sat on a fallen log, looking out over a valley white with snow, mountains rising in the distance. "It is beautiful here," Vera said. "Different from Missouri, bigger somehow. That is the West for you. It either makes you feel small or it makes you feel free, depending on the day." Liam unwrapped the cheese, cutting slices with his pocket knife. "Which one is it for you?" She considered the question seriously. "Free, I think, or at least the possibility of freedom. Back home, everyone knew who I was, what had happened to my father, the debts he left. I could not turn around without someone pitying me or judging me. Here, I can be whoever I choose to be. And who do you choose to be? I have not decided yet." She accepted the slice of cheese he offered. "Someone strong, I think. Someone who does not need rescuing." "For what it is worth, I do not think you needed rescuing. I think you were doing a fine job of saving yourself. I just helped speed things along a bit." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and smiled. It transformed her face, chasing away the shadows and making her beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with regular features and everything to do with spirit. "You are kind, Liam Archer." "I am practical," he corrected, but he was smiling too. Kindness just happens to be practical sometimes. They rode on, and by late afternoon they were approaching the ranch. It sat in a small valley, sheltered by hills on three sides, with a creek running through it that was frozen now but would run swift and clear come spring. The main house was built of logs, solid and well-made if not fancy, with a wide porch and real glass in the windows. The barn and bunkhouse stood nearby, and Liam could see smoke rising from the bunkhouse chimney, which meant his men were back from wherever they'd gone. As they rode into the yard, two men emerged from the bunkhouse. The first was tall and lanky, maybe 50 years old, with a weathered face and sharp eyes. The second was younger, mid-20s, built like a bull with red hair and a beard to match. "Boss," the older man said, nodding to Liam. Then his eyes shifted to Vera, and one eyebrow rose fractionally. "Jack Sam," Liam said, swinging down from the horse. He turned to help Vera dismount. "This is Miss Vera Durant. She will be taking over the cooking and housekeeping that Mrs. Chen used to do." Jack, the older man, nodded politely. "Madam." Sam just stared, his mouth slightly open, until Jack elbowed him hard in the ribs. "Madam," he echoed belatedly. "Pleased to meet you both," Vera said, her voice steady despite what must have been nervousness. "Jack, can you see to the horse?" Liam asked. "I am going to show Miss Durant around the house, get her settled." "Sure thing, boss." Jack took the mare's reins, already leading her toward the barn. Sam followed, but not before casting one more glance back at Vera. "Do not mind Sam," Liam said as he led Vera toward the house. "He is a good worker, but not much for manners. Jack is solid, though. Been with me since I bought this place 4 years ago. You can trust him if you need anything and I am not around." The house was, as Liam had warned, in a state of mild chaos. Dishes were stacked in the kitchen. Dust coated most surfaces, and there was a general air of bachelor neglect about the place. But the bones were good, the furniture solid and well made, the fireplace big enough to heat the whole main room. "Your room is through here," Liam said, leading her down a short hallway. He opened a door to reveal a simple but clean bedroom with a real bed, a wardrobe, a chest of drawers, and even a small desk by the window. "It has got its own stove, and I will make sure to keep it stocked with wood. The bedding is clean, I washed it last week." Vera stepped into the room slowly, running her hand along the quilt on the bed. "This is mine, my own room. Yes, like I said, you will have your own space. I am just down the hall, and Jack and Sam are in the bunkhouse with the other two hands who are out checking the herd right now. You will be safe here, Vera. I give you my word on that." She turned to look at him, and there was a sheen of moisture in her eyes that she blinked away quickly. "Thank you, truly." "No need for thanks. You will earn your keep soon enough." He gestured back toward the main room. "Let me show you the kitchen, such as it is." He gave her the tour, showing her where everything was, apologizing for the state of things, explaining his meager attempts at cooking. She listened carefully, asking questions about his preferences, about the ranch hand's schedules, about what supplies he had on hand. She was all business now, and Liam could see her taking mental notes, already planning how to organize things. "I will start tomorrow," she said when they'd finished the tour. "Today I need to rest if that is all right. My feet are still tender. Of course, you take all the time you need. I will throw together some supper for us, nothing fancy." "I could help," she offered. "No, you rest." "Doctor's orders," he smiled at her. "Or ranch owner's orders, which is close enough." She smiled back and retreated to her room, closing the door softly behind her. Liam stood in the hallway for a moment, wondering what exactly he'd gotten himself into, then went to attempt cooking something that wouldn't poison them both. Supper was edible if not impressive. Salt pork and beans with more of Lars's bread. They ate in the main room, sitting at the rough table near the fire. Vera was quiet, exhaustion evident in the way she moved, and as soon as she'd finished eating, she excused herself and went to bed. Liam cleaned up, then sat by the fire for a while, smoking his pipe and thinking. He'd lived alone for 4 years now, ever since he'd saved enough from working other ranches to buy this place. Well, not entirely alone. There were the ranch hands, but they kept to themselves mostly, and Mrs. Chen had come during the day and left before supper. Having someone else in the house, a woman especially, felt strange. Not bad strange, just different. He thought about how she'd looked trembling in the snow, about how she'd tried to refuse his boots even though she was clearly dying on her feet, about the steel in her voice when she talked about starting over. She was strong. He could see that, but she'd been hurt too, hurt in ways that went deeper than torn feet and frozen skin. He finished his pipe and went to bed, and if his last thoughts before sleep were of storm-gray eyes and a smile that chased away shadows, well, that was his business and nobody else's. The next morning, Liam woke to the smell of coffee and something else, something that made his mouth water. He dressed quickly and emerged to find Vera in the kitchen, moving around like she'd been there for years. The dishes from last night were washed and put away, the table was wiped clean, and there was a pot of something simmering on the stove that smelled like heaven. "Good morning," she said brightly. "I hope you do not mind, I started early. Mind, I am amazed." He moved to the coffee pot and poured himself a cup. "What is that?" "Oatmeal with apples and cinnamon. I found some dried apples in the pantry and the cinnamon was in the spice box." "Sit down, it is ready." He sat, and she served him a bowl of oatmeal that was creamy and sweet, nothing like the lumpy, flavorless stuff he usually made for himself. He ate 3 bowls and she looked pleased by his appetite. "The boys will be in for breakfast soon," Liam said, wiping his mouth. "They usually come up around 7. I will make flapjacks and bacon." Vera said. "I saw you have eggs too. How many should I plan for? 4 men total, plus you and me. They will eat about 3 times what a normal person would, fair warning." She nodded, already pulling out supplies, and when Jack, Sam, and the 2 other hands, Pete and Tom, came trooping in an hour later, she had a feast laid out that made all 4 men stop and stare. "Madam," Jack said with real reverence in his voice, "if you cook like this regularly, we might never leave this ranch." "That is the idea," Liam said dryly. "Keep you all well fed and content so you will not run off to the next place offering $1 more." The men laughed and dug in, and the next 30 minutes were filled with the sounds of serious eating. Vera moved around the kitchen, refilling platters, pouring coffee, clearly in her element. When the men had finished and headed back out to work, they all thanked her with genuine warmth, even shy Sam managing a full sentence. "You have made a good impression," Liam said as he helped her clear the table. "They are kind men." She started washing dishes, her hands moving efficiently. "And they appreciate good food, which makes cooking for them a pleasure. Still, you do not have to do this much. I was not expecting 5-course meals." This was hardly 5 courses. She glanced at him, amused. "And I like to cook. It gives me purpose, makes me feel useful. After the last few weeks of feeling helpless, I need this." He understood that, so he left her to it and went out to work with the men. There was always work on a ranch, fences to mend, animals to check on, equipment to repair. The herd was smaller now than it would be in spring. Some of the cattle sold off before winter, but there were still about 200 head to keep an eye on, plus the horses and the chickens and the general upkeep of the place. He was repairing a section of fence line when Jack came to work beside him, pulling on a new section of wire without being asked. "She seems nice," Jack said after a while. "She is. Pretty too, I suppose." Jack gave him a knowing look. "You suppose?" Sam nearly choked on his coffee when he saw her. Sam is 24 and thinks anything in a skirt is pretty. Liam hammered in a fence post with more force than strictly necessary. "Miss Durant is an employee, nothing more. If you say so, boss." Jack's tone was mild, but there was a smile playing around his mouth. "I do say so." They worked in silence for a while, the winter sun weak but welcome after the storm. Liam's thoughts kept drifting back to the house, wondering what Vera was doing, if she was all right, if her feet were healing properly. He forced himself to focus on the work, but it was harder than it should have been. When they broke for lunch, they returned to find the house transformed. Vera had been busy, cleaning and organizing, and the main room looked better than it had in months. The table was set with lunch, thick sandwiches, and soup that steamed invitingly. "Miss Durant, you are going to spoil us," Pete said, a grizzled cowboy who'd been working ranches since before Liam was born. "A little spoiling never hurt anyone," she replied, smiling. The days fell into a pattern after that. Vera cooked and cleaned, and the house began to feel like a home instead of just a place to sleep. The men ate well, worked hard, and treated her with respect bordering on reverence. Liam found himself looking forward to meals, to the conversations he and Vera would have in the evenings after the hands had gone back to the bunkhouse. They talked about everything and nothing, her life back in Missouri, his childhood in Texas before his parents died and he'd set out on his own, her father's store, his dreams for the ranch. She was easy to talk to, quick to laugh, and sharp as a tack. He learned that she could do sums in her head faster than he could with paper, that she'd read every book in her father's small library twice, that she missed the green of Missouri, but was falling in love with the stark beauty of California. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Winter began to loosen its grip, the days growing incrementally longer, the snow starting to melt in the afternoons. Vera's feet healed, the cuts and frostbite fading to scars. She said she didn't mind. She said they were reminders that she'd survived, that she was stronger than she'd thought. Liam found himself watching her sometimes, when she didn't know he was looking, watching the way she moved around the kitchen, the way she hummed while she worked, the way her face lit up when she laughed. He told himself he was just making sure she was settling in all right, that he was being a responsible employer. But deep down he knew it was more than that. He was falling for her, plain and simple, and he didn't know what to do about it. One evening in early March, after they'd finished supper and were sitting by the fire, Vera reading a book he'd loaned her and Liam pretending to look over ranch accounts, she suddenly looked up. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you really give me your boots that day?" She closed the book, her finger marking her place. "And do not say because any decent man would. I want the real answer." He set down his pencil, considering the question, knowing she deserved the truth. "Because you were trying so hard," he said finally. "Because you were half frozen and bleeding and you still kept walking, kept fighting. I have seen grown men give up with less cause. You did not even know if there was anything ahead of you on that trail, but you kept going anyway. That kind of courage, that kind of strength, it deserves to be rewarded." She was quiet for a moment, looking into the fire. "I was so scared," she said softly. "I have never been that scared in my life. I really thought I was going to die out there. But you did not. No. Because you gave me your boots." She looked at him then, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "And your name. You introduced me to Lars, and your ranch hands as Miss Durant gave me legitimacy, respectability. You have no idea how much that meant to me. Back home, after my father died, people looked at me differently, like I was somehow less than I'd been before. But here, you treated me like I was someone worth helping, worth respecting." "You are worth all that and more," Liam said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. Something shifted in the air between them, a tension that was not unpleasant but was definitely there. Vera's cheeks flushed slightly, and she looked back down at her book. "Thank you," she said quietly. They did not talk much after that, but the silence was comfortable, companionable. When Vera finally said good night and went to her room, Liam sat by the fire for a long time, thinking about courage and strength, about storm-gray eyes and a smile that could light up a room. He was in trouble, he realized. Deep trouble. Because he was not just falling for Vera Durant. He was already halfway gone and picking up speed. The next day was Sunday, which meant a lighter workload and time for personal tasks. Liam was in the barn, working on repairing a saddle when Vera came to find him. She was wearing one of the dresses she'd bought with her first month's wages, simple blue cotton that brought out her eyes. "I was thinking of baking bread today," she said. "But we are running low on flour and yeast. Do you need anything from town? I thought I might ride in." "Ride in." "Have you ever ridden a horse?" Liam set down the saddle. "Of course. My father kept a horse for deliveries. I am not an expert, but I can handle a gentle mount." "I will take you," Liam said, making the decision instantly. "Give me a few minutes to finish this and saddle up 2 horses." "You do not have to do that. I can manage on my own." "I know you can. But I need to pick up some things myself, and besides, I would not be much of an employer if I let you head into town alone the first time. Bodie can be rough, especially on Sundays when the miners have their pay and are looking to spend it." She looked like she wanted to argue but finally nodded. "All right, thank you." They saddled 2 horses, a gentle mare for Vera and Liam's gelding for himself, and set out for town. It was a beautiful day, the sky clear, the air crisp but not bitterly cold. The trail was muddy in places where the snow had melted, but passable. Bodie, California, spread out before them as they crested a rise. a jumble of wood buildings clinging to the hills, testament to the gold rush that had created it. The population had shrunk from its peak, but there were still a few thousand people calling it home, enough to support several saloons, a general store, a church, and various other businesses. They rode down the main street, and Liam was aware of the looks they were getting, people curious about the woman riding beside him. He nodded to the folks he knew, ignored the ones he did not, and tied up in front of Miller's general store. "Stay close," he said to Vera as they went inside. "And if anyone bothers you, let me know." The store was well stocked, considering its remote location, and they spent a pleasant hour picking out supplies. Mrs. Miller, who ran the place with her husband, fussed over Vera, asking questions that were nosy but well-intentioned, clearly trying to figure out who this new woman in town was. "She is working for me," Liam said firmly when Mrs. Miller's questions got too personal. "Cooking and keeping house." "Oh." Mrs. Miller's eyebrows rose. "Well, that is nice. That is real nice. You need a good woman to look after things out there." Liam did not correct her assumption that there was more to it, mostly because he did not want to spend the next 20 minutes explaining. They collected their purchases and were loading them onto the horses when a voice called out, "Archer, hold up a minute." Liam turned to see Sheriff Douglas crossing the street, a big man with a salt and pepper beard and a star pinned to his chest. He'd been sheriff in Bodie for 5 years, a fair man but tough when he needed to be. "Sheriff," Liam said, nodding, "what can I do for you? Just wanted to give you a heads up. There has been some trouble lately, rustlers hitting ranches north of here, lost some cattle, couple of horses. They have not hit your place yet, but I would be careful, maybe post a watch at night." "I will do that, thanks for the warning." The sheriff's eyes moved to Vera, curious. "Madam, Sheriff," she nodded politely. "This is Miss Vera Durant," Liam said. "She is working at my ranch." "Miss Durant, this is Sheriff Douglas. Pleased to meet you," the sheriff said, touching his hat. "If you need anything while you are in town, madam, you just let me know. It is my job to make sure everyone is safe and sound." "Thank you, Sheriff." They finished loading up and headed back to the ranch. On the way, Vera asked, "Do you think the rustlers will come to your ranch?" "Maybe. Probably if they are hitting everyone else, but we will be ready for them." He glanced at her. "Do not worry. I will not let anything happen to you or the ranch." "I am not worried," she said, and he believed her. "I trust you." Those 3 words, simple and straightforward, hit him harder than they should have. She trusted him. After everything she'd been through, after being hurt and betrayed, she trusted him. He vowed silently to be worthy of that trust, no matter what. That night, he talked to the hands, and they agreed to set up a rotating watch. 2 men would stay up each night, taking shifts, keeping an eye on the herd and the buildings. It was an inconvenience, but necessary. Liam took the first watch that night, walking the perimeter with Jack, checking the herd, looking for anything out of place. It was peaceful, the stars bright overhead, the night sounds of the ranch familiar and comforting. "You have got it bad," Jack said suddenly, breaking the silence. "What?" For Miss Durant. "You have got it bad." Liam did not bother denying it this time. "Is it that obvious?" To anyone paying attention, yes. Jack's weathered face creased in a smile. "But for what it is worth, I think she feels the same way." "You do?" "I've got eyes, boss. I have seen the way she looks at you when she thinks no one is watching. And I have seen the way her whole face lights up when you come in from working. That is not how a woman looks at an employer." Hope flared in Liam's chest, but he tamped it down. "Even if that is true, I do not know if I should do anything about it. She has been through a lot. The last thing she needs is her employer making advances. Maybe, or maybe the last thing she needs is to feel like she is alone in what she is feeling." Jack clapped him on the shoulder. Something to think about anyway. They finished the watch and woke Sam and Pete to take over. Liam went to bed but lay awake for a long time, thinking about what Jack had said, wondering if it was true, wondering what he should do about it if it was. The next few days passed quietly, no sign of rustlers, just the normal work of the ranch. But there was a new awareness between Liam and Vera, a tension that had not been there before, or maybe had been there all along, and was only now becoming impossible to ignore. Little things took on new significance. The brush of her hand against his when she passed him the coffee pot. The way his fingers lingered when he helped her down from a horse. The long looks they shared across the dinner table, conversations held without words. It all came to a head one evening about a week after their trip to town. Liam had been out late, helping a cow through a difficult birth, and he came back to the house exhausted and covered in blood and other fluids. He was heading for the washroom when he nearly collided with Vera in the hallway. "Oh," she gasped, steadying herself with a hand on his arm. Then she saw the state of him and her eyes widened. "Are you hurt?" "No, just messy. One of the cows had trouble delivering. Calf and mother are both fine, but it was touch and go for a while. You should clean up. I will heat some water for a bath. You do not have to do that, I know." "I want to." She smiled at him, and in the dim light of the hallway she looked so beautiful it made his chest ache. "Go on, I will bring the water when it is ready." He washed up quickly in the basin, getting the worst of the mess off, then went to his room and stripped down, putting on a robe. There was a large metal tub in the small room off the kitchen that served as a bathing room, and he headed there, finding Vera already filling it with hot water from the big kettle. "Thank you," he said, and she nodded, not meeting his eyes, a flush on her cheeks. She finished filling the tub and left, closing the door behind her. Liam sank into the hot water with a groan of relief, feeling the heat soak into tired muscles. He scrubbed himself clean, then just sat for a while, letting the warmth ease the aches and pains of a long day. When he finally climbed out and dried off, putting on clean clothes, he felt almost human again. He found Vera in the kitchen, making cocoa, a treat she'd started doing on cold evenings. She handed him a cup without a word, and they moved to sit by the fire. For a while they just sat in comfortable silence, sipping the sweet drink, listening to the fire crackle. "Can I ask you something?" Vera said finally. "Always. Why did you never marry? You have got a good ranch, you are a good man." "I would have thought some woman would have snapped you up by now," he smiled slightly. "I have been too busy building this place, I guess, and I never met anyone who made me want to change my plans. Never. Not until recently." He said it quietly but clearly, and he saw her reaction, the way her breath caught, the way her fingers tightened on her cup. "Liam," she said, and there was a world of emotion in his name. "I know I should not say anything," he continued, setting down his cup and turning to face her fully. "I know you work for me, and I do not want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable. But I cannot keep pretending I do not feel what I feel. You are amazing, Vera. You are strong and brave and smart and beautiful, and somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you." She set down her own cup with shaking hands. "You love me." "Yes. But if you do not feel the same way, we will never speak of it again. You will keep your job, nothing will change, I promise you that." "Nothing will change," she laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "Liam, everything has already changed. Everything changed the moment you gave me your boots. I think I started falling for you that day, standing in the snow, looking into your eyes and seeing kindness when I expected nothing." "You do?" "Yes." She moved closer to him, closing the distance between them on the bench. "I fought it because I was scared. I have been hurt before, betrayed before. But you are not like other men. You are good and honorable, and you make me feel safe in a way I have never felt safe before." "Vera," he breathed, and then she was in his arms and he was kissing her, and it was like coming home. She tasted like cocoa and something sweeter, something uniquely her, and he could have kissed her forever and not gotten tired of it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she laughed, a sound of pure joy. "I love you, Liam Archer. I love you so much it terrifies me. Do not be terrified. I will take care of you, I promise, for as long as you will let me." "How about forever?" she asked, her eyes shining. "Does forever work for you?" "Forever works just fine." They kissed again, and this time it was slower, deeper, a promise sealed between them. When they finally pulled apart, Liam rested his forehead against hers. "I want to marry you," he said. "I want to do this right, proper. But I do not want to rush you either. We can wait as long as you need." "I do not want to wait," Vera said firmly. "I have spent enough of my life waiting, being careful, doing what I was supposed to do. I want to marry you, Liam. I want to be your wife, as soon as possible. Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." He kissed her again, joy bubbling up inside him like champagne. "Then we will ride into town tomorrow and talk to Reverend Pierce. If he can do it, we could be married by the end of the week." "A week," she grinned. "Can you wait that long?" "I will manage. Somehow." They stayed up late talking, making plans, laughing like children. When they finally said goodnight, it was with sweet, chaste kisses at Vera's bedroom door, both of them reluctant to part, but knowing it was proper to wait. The next morning, Liam called the hands together and told them the news. Jack grinned and shook his hand heartily. Sam looked thunderstruck but offered awkward congratulations, and Pete and Tom both seemed pleased if unsurprised. "We figured this was coming," Pete said. "You two were about as subtle as a bull in a china shop." Liam and Vera rode to Bodie that afternoon, and Reverend Pierce, a kindly older man who'd known Liam for years, agreed immediately to perform the ceremony. They set a date for Saturday, 4 days away, and invited the handful of people in town that Liam counted as friends. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Vera worked with Mrs. Miller to find fabric for a proper dress, simple but beautiful, in a cream color that brought out the warmth in her skin. Liam got cleaned up, had Jack trim his hair, and dug out the one suit he owned, hoping it still fit. Saturday dawned clear and bright, the first real day of spring, with the smell of growing things in the air. They gathered at the small church in Bodie, a simple wood building with a cross on top and glass windows that let in the light. The handful of guests filled the first few pews. Jack, Sam, Pete, Tom the Millers, Sheriff Douglas, Lars Johansson, who'd ridden down from his trading post, and a few others. Liam stood at the altar, watching the door, and when Vera entered on Lars's arm, she'd asked him to give her away, having no family of her own. His breath caught in his chest. She was radiant, her hair loose around her shoulders, the cream dress fitting her perfectly, a small bouquet of early wildflowers in her hands. She walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on his, and when she reached him and took his hand, he felt like the luckiest man alive. Reverend Pierce kept the ceremony short and sweet, speaking about love and commitment, about the bonds that tie two souls together. When it came time for the vows, Liam spoke clearly, his voice steady. "I, Liam Archer, take you, Vera Durant, to be my wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part." Vera's voice was strong and sure as she repeated the words back to him, and when she said, "I do," he felt his heart might burst from happiness. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Pierce said, smiling. "You may kiss your bride." Liam did not need to be told twice. He pulled Vera close and kissed her thoroughly, to the whoops and cheers of their friends, and when they broke apart, they were both laughing. They had a simple celebration at the house, the ranch hands having prepared a feast with Vera's direction earlier in the week. There was roast beef and potatoes, fresh bread, vegetables from the root cellar, and a cake that Mrs. Miller had made, rich with dried fruit and nuts. They ate and drank, telling stories and jokes, and Liam could not remember ever being happier. As the sun set and their guests began to leave, Lars pulled Liam aside for a moment. "You did good," the old Swede said, clapping him on the back. "That is a fine woman you married. Take care of her. I will, I promise." "I know you will. You are a good man, Liam Archer. You deserve this happiness." When everyone had gone and the house was quiet, Liam found Vera on the porch, looking out at the stars. He wrapped his arms around her from behind and she leaned back against him with a contented sigh. "Happy?" he asked. "Incredibly. I keep thinking I am going to wake up and find out this was all a dream." "It is no dream. You are stuck with me now, Mrs. Archer." She turned in his arms, smiling up at him. "Mrs. Archer, I like the sound of that. So do I." He kissed her softly, tenderly. "Come inside. It is getting cold." Their wedding night was tender and sweet. Two people coming together in love and trust, discovering each other with care and patience. Liam made sure Vera knew she was cherished, adored, worshipped, and when they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, he felt complete in a way he never had before. The spring turned to summer, and Vera bloomed like the wildflowers that carpeted the valley. She took to ranch life naturally, helping with the animals, learning to ride better, even learning to rope cattle under Jack's patient tutelage. The house was always full of life and laughter now, and the ranch hands seemed happier too, working harder and staying out of trouble. By June, Vera told Liam she was pregnant, her eyes shining with joy and a little bit of fear. He swept her into his arms and spun her around, overjoyed, already imagining a child with her gray eyes and his stubborn chin. "Are you happy?" she asked when he finally set her down. "Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am ecstatic, thrilled over the moon. Good," she smiled. "Because I am terrified." "Do not be. You are going to be an amazing mother, and I will be right there with you every step of the way." They told the hands, who were all pleased and excited, already making plans to build a cradle and baby furniture. Jack had a talent for woodworking, and he set to it with enthusiasm, crafting a cradle that was a work of art, carved with horses and cattle and mountains. The summer passed peacefully. No sign of the rustlers that had worried the sheriff. The herd grew fat on summer grass, the garden Vera planted flourished, and life was good. In early September they made a trip to town for supplies, and Vera, now visibly pregnant, was fussed over by every woman in Bodie. Mrs. Miller gave her a box full of baby clothes, carefully sewn from soft cotton, and several other women offered advice, some of it useful, some of it ridiculous. On the way home, Vera was quiet and Liam asked if she was all right. "I was just thinking," she said, "about that day on the trail, about how close I came to dying. If you had not come along when you did, I would not be here. I would not be carrying your child. I would not have this beautiful life. But I did come along," Liam said firmly, "and you are here, and we have this life together. Do not think about what might have been. Think about what is, what will be. You are right." She smiled at him, that smile that could still make his heart skip a beat. "I am just feeling sentimental, I suppose. Blame the baby." "I will blame the baby for everything from now on. It is the perfect excuse." She laughed and swatted his arm, and they rode home in comfortable silence, the afternoon sun warm on their shoulders. In early December, as the first real snows of winter began to fall, Vera went into labor. Liam sent Sam riding hell-bent for leather to town to fetch Dr. Harrison, while he tried to keep calm and be helpful, though he suspected he was mostly getting in the way. Jack's wife, Anna, who Liam had hired to help Vera around the house as her pregnancy progressed, took charge, heating water, gathering towels, and generally being competent while Liam paced like a caged animal. The labor was long, lasting through the night and into the next day, and Liam thought he might go mad with worry. But finally, just as the sun was setting on a clear, cold winter evening, he heard the sharp cry of a baby, and Anna came out with a huge smile on her face. "Congratulations," she said. "You have a son, a son." Liam felt tears prick at his eyes. "And Vera, tired but fine, she is asking for you." He rushed into the bedroom to find Vera propped up on pillows, pale and exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up when he entered, and the love in her eyes nearly undid him. "Come meet your son," she said softly. He crossed to the bed and carefully, so carefully, took the baby into his arms. His son was tiny, red-faced, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that might turn out to be gray like his mother's. He was perfect. "Hello," Liam whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I am your father, and I promise I am going to do my very best by you." The baby yawned, a huge yawn for such a small person, and Vera laughed weakly. "What should we name him?" Liam asked, not taking his eyes off his son. "I was thinking James," Vera said. "After my father, James Lars Archer, if that is all right with you." Lars as a middle name to honor the man who helped us when we needed it. "James Lars Archer," Liam repeated, trying it out. I like it very much." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and together they looked at their son, this tiny miracle they'd created, this new life that represented everything good and hopeful in the world. The winter passed, cold but manageable, and James thrived, growing bigger and stronger every day. He was a good baby, crying only when he needed something, sleeping relatively well and smiling early, his whole face lighting up when Liam or Vera came into view. Liam had never known he could love something so completely, so fiercely. He would watch Vera nursing their son, the two of them bathed in firelight, and feel such a rush of love and gratitude it nearly overwhelmed him. His family, his wife and child, his life. Spring came again, the second spring since that day on the frozen trail, and with it new beginnings. The ranch was doing well, the herd having survived the winter in good shape. Liam hired 2 more hands to help with the increased work, and they built a second bunkhouse to house them all. On a warm day in April, almost exactly a year after their wedding, Liam and Vera took James on a picnic by the creek, now running swift and clear with snowmelt. They spread a blanket on the bank, and James, now able to sit up on his own, gurgled happily as he watched the water. "Do you ever think about that day?" Liam asked, lying back with his hands behind his head, watching clouds drift across the sky. "Which day?" Vera was nursing James, discreetly covered with a light shawl. "The day we met, on the trail. All the time." She looked down at their son, then over at Liam. "I think about how lost I was, how scared, how I thought my life was over, and then you appeared like something out of a storybook and gave me your boots. And my name," Liam reminded her, "and your name." She smiled. "You gave me everything, Liam. A home, a family, a life worth living. How do I ever repay that you already have? Every day, every smile, every moment we have together, that is the repayment." James finished nursing and Vera burped him, then laid him on the blanket to kick his legs and wave his arms at nothing in particular. Liam reached over and took Vera's hand, interlacing their fingers. "I love you," he said, "more than I can ever properly express. You and James, You are my whole world, and you are ours." She squeezed his hand. "I used to think courage meant doing things alone, not needing anyone, but I was wrong. Real courage is letting yourself need someone, letting yourself love and be loved. You taught me that." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their son, listening to the creek, feeling the sun on their faces. It was a perfect moment, one of those rare times when everything aligns just right and you are aware of your own happiness. Years passed, good years filled with hard work and laughter and love. James grew into a sturdy boy with his mother's eyes and his father's stubborn determination. When he was 3, Vera gave birth to a daughter, Lily, who had her father's dark hair and her mother's smile. 2 years after that, another son, Thomas, arrived, completing their family. The ranch prospered, growing from a small operation to one of the most successful in the region. Liam and Vera's reputation for fair dealing and honest work spread, and they had more business than they could handle. They hired more hands, built a bigger barn, expanded the house to accommodate their growing family. Jack stayed with them through it all, becoming not just an employee but a dear friend, a grandfather figure to the children. Sam eventually married a girl from Bodie, a sweet young woman named Mary, and they built a small house on the edge of the ranch property. Pete and Tom moved on eventually, seeking new adventures, but they were replaced by other good men who appreciated the way the Archers ran their ranch. Bodie itself began to change as the mining declined, some people moving away, others staying and finding new ways to make a living. The Archers became pillars of the community, Vera known for her generosity and kindness, Liam for his integrity and hard work. The children grew, as children do, learning to ride, to work, to take pride in the ranch that was their heritage. James was serious and thoughtful, already showing signs of being a natural rancher. Lily was wild and free, more comfortable on a horse than on foot, fearless in a way that both thrilled and terrified her parents. Thomas was the peacemaker, the one who could settle arguments between his older siblings, sweet-natured and kind. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Liam took Vera back to the spot where they'd first met, riding up the mountain pass on a warm June day. The trail looked different now, green and lush, no trace of the winter storm that had nearly claimed Vera's life. "I cannot believe it has been 10 years, Vera said as they dismounted and walked to the edge of the trail, looking out over the valley spread below. "Best 10 years of my life," Liam said, wrapping his arms around her from behind, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "Mine too." She leaned back against him. "Sometimes I still dream about that day. I am back in the snow, freezing and alone, and I wake up terrified. But then I reach out and you are there, and I remember that it is all real. This life, this happiness, it is all real." "It is real," Liam confirmed, kissing the top of her head. "And it is never going away. I am never going away. You are stuck with me forever, remember?" "Forever," she agreed, turning in his arms to face him. "That is exactly how long I want." They kissed, long and sweet, the kiss of two people who had built a life together, who had weathered storms both literal and figurative and come out stronger on the other side. "You have any regrets?" Liam asked when they finally pulled apart. Vera pretended to think about it. "Let me see. I am married to a handsome, kind, hard-working man who loves me and treats me like a queen. I have 3 beautiful, healthy children. I live on a successful ranch in one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen. I have friends and community and purpose." She grinned. "No, I cannot say I have any regrets. You, not a single one. Except maybe that I did not meet you sooner. We met exactly when we were supposed to meet. Not a moment sooner, not a moment later. It was fate, I think, destiny. I believe you might be right about that." They stayed on the mountain for a while longer, talking and remembering, before heading back to the ranch, back to their children and their life. As they rode, Liam thought about everything that had happened since that cold December day when he'd come across a woman trembling on a frozen trail. He'd given her his boots that day, and his name, but in return she'd given him everything, a home that was more than just a house, a family that filled his heart to overflowing, a love that made every day worth living. As they crested the last rise and the ranch came into view, their children playing in the yard, the sun setting behind the mountains, Liam felt a deep sense of contentment, of rightness. This was where he was meant to be, with her, with them, forever. Vera must have felt something similar because she turned to him and smiled, that smile that still had the power to take his breath away even after 10 years. "Let's go home," she said. "We are home," Liam replied. "Anywhere you are is home to me." She laughed, joyful and free, and kicked her horse into a canter, racing toward the house and their children. Liam followed, laughing too, and as they rode into their yard he sent up a silent prayer of thanks. Thanks for the storm that had brought them together. Thanks for the courage that had kept Vera walking when she could have given up. Thanks for the love that had transformed them both, making them better, stronger, happier than they'd ever been alone. The years continued to pass, as they always do, but the love between Liam and Vera only grew stronger, deeper, richer. They faced challenges, as all couples do, but they faced them together, and that made all the difference. When James turned 18, he took on more responsibility at the ranch, working beside his father with pride and skill. Lily, at 16, was still wild and free, but she'd developed a gift for training horses, and people came from all over to buy horses she'd worked with. Thomas, at 14, surprised everyone by showing an interest in book learning, and Liam and Vera arranged for him to attend school in Sacramento, with plans for college in the future. The children grew and left, starting their own lives, their own adventures. James eventually married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread, and they built a house on the other side of the property, staying close but independent. Lily married a horse breeder from Nevada, and they traveled the West together, buying and selling and training horses. Thomas went to college, then law school, eventually becoming a lawyer in San Francisco, though he came home to visit as often as he could. And through it all, through every change and challenge, every joy and sorrow, Liam and Vera remained at the center. Their love the foundation upon which everything else was built. On their 30th wedding anniversary, they threw a big party, inviting everyone they knew, the house and yard overflowing with friends and family. Their children were there with their own children, 7 grandchildren in total, ranging from infants to teenagers. Jack was there, ancient now but still sharp as a tack, regaling the younger folks with stories of the old days. As the sun set and the party wound down, Liam and Vera found themselves alone on the porch, much as they had been on their wedding night 3 decades earlier. Vera's hair was streaked with silver now, and Liam's face was lined and weathered from decades of outdoor work, but when they looked at each other, they saw the same people they'd been that day on the frozen trail. 30 years, Vera said wonderingly. How did it go so fast? I do not know. But I would not change a single moment of it. Not even the hard times, especially not the hard times. Those are what made us who we are. He took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her wedding ring, worn smooth by time. I meant what I said that day on the mountain. You are my whole world, Vera. You and our family. Everything good in my life, it all started when I gave you my boots. And I meant what I said too. You saved my life that day in more ways than one. I was not just freezing to death physically. I was frozen inside too, scared and hurt and lost. But you thawed me out, Liam. You showed me what love really means, what it means to be cherished and valued and seen. You did the same for me. I did not even know I was lonely until you came into my life. I thought I was content, but I was just existing. You taught me how to really live." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, one by one, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding, every important moment of their lives together. From inside, they could hear the voices of their children and grandchildren, laughing and talking, the sounds of family. "We did good," Vera said softly. "Look at all of this. Look at the life we built, the family we raised. We did good, Liam." "We did," he agreed, "and we are not done yet. We have got plenty of years left, plenty of time for more memories, more adventures." "Growing old with you," Vera said, "is my favorite adventure yet." He pulled her close, kissing her forehead, and they stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by love and light and the knowledge that they'd found something rare and precious. A love that lasted, that endured, that grew stronger with each passing year. The party broke up eventually, everyone heading home or to guest rooms, and Liam and Vera went to bed in the room they'd shared for 30 years. As they lay in the darkness, Vera's head on Liam's shoulder, his arm around her waist, he thought about everything they'd been through, everything they'd built. "I love you," he said into the darkness. "I love you too," she replied, her voice sleepy and content. "Forever and always." "Forever and always," he echoed, and then they slept. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had chosen love over fear, who had built a life together that was better than anything either of them could have imagined alone. Years later, when they were old and gray, sitting on that same porch in rocking chairs that James had made for them, watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard, Vera would sometimes tell the story of how they met. The children would gather around, wide-eyed, listening to the tale of the frozen trail, the torn shoes, the cowboy who gave up his boots. "Was it love at first sight?" one of the great-grandchildren asked once, a little girl with Vera's gray eyes. Vera looked at Liam and they shared a smile, a lifetime of love and understanding in that single glance. "Not at first sight," Vera said. "At first sight, I was too cold and scared to think about love, but maybe at second sight or third. By the time your great-grandfather had given me his boots and helped me onto his horse, I think I was already starting to fall, and I have been falling ever since." "Falling and catching each other," Liam added. "That is what love is, really, falling and knowing someone will be there to catch you." The child seemed satisfied with this answer, and she ran off to play with the others. Liam and Vera sat in their rocking chairs, holding hands, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and red. "You think they will understand?" Vera asked. "The children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. Do you think they will understand how lucky we are, how rare this is?" "Maybe not now," Liam said. "But someday when they find their own loves, their own adventures, they will understand. And they will have our story to guide them, to show them what is possible when you give someone your boots and your name and your heart." Vera squeezed his hand. "I like that, our story guiding them." "It is a good story," Liam said. "One worth telling, the best story," Vera agreed. "Because it is ours." They sat together as the sun sank below the mountains and the stars began to emerge, two people who had lived and loved fully, who had built something lasting and beautiful out of a chance encounter on a frozen trail. Their story was not about grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though it had started with both. It was about the quiet, steady love that grew between two people who chose each other every day, in 1,000 small ways for a lifetime. And in the end, that was the greatest love story of all. The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through the generations. each one adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation that Liam and Vera had built. And always, on cold December nights when the snow fell thick and fast, someone would tell the story of the cowboy who gave a freezing woman his boots, and how that single act of kindness had changed 2 lives forever. Liam and Vera lived to see their children grow old, their grandchildren start families of their own, their great-grandchildren take their first steps. They lived long lives, full lives, happy lives, always together, always partners, always in love. And when they died within months of each other, as old couples who have been together forever often do, they were buried on a hill overlooking the ranch they'd built, side by side, together in death as they had been in life. Their children placed 2 headstones on that hill, simple but beautiful, engraved with their names and dates and a single line that summed up their entire story. He gave her his boots and his name. She gave him her heart and her life. Together they built forever. And if, on cold December nights, you ride past that hill and listen carefully, you might hear the echo of laughter, the ghost of a love story that never really ended, because true love never does. It just continues, generation after generation, a legacy of kindness and courage and choosing each other, always, no matter what. The ranch still stands today, run by James's great-grandson, a man who inherited his ancestors' integrity and his great-great-grandmother's steel spine. On the wall in the main house hangs a pair of old boots, worn and weathered, preserved carefully through the generations. And beneath them, a small plaque tells a story that begins. On a frozen trail in December 1876, a cowboy saw a woman trembling with torn shoes. He gave her his boots and his name, and she gave him forever. It is a story of love found in the most unlikely of circumstances, of kindness rewarded, of 2 people who took a chance on each other and built something beautiful. It is a story that reminds us that the smallest acts of compassion can change the world, that love can bloom even in the harshest conditions, and that forever is not just a promise, but a choice you make every single day. And it all started with a pair of boots and a frozen trail, with a cowboy's kindness and a woman's courage, with 2 hearts that found each other against all odds and decided to never let go. That is the story of Liam and Vera Archer, and it is a story that will be told for generations to come, a testament to the enduring power of love, the strength of commitment, and the beauty of 2 souls who found their home in each other.